Hi, this is Mark with Skywagon Podcasts. We interview interesting people in aviation, and today we've got Don Wolf here from the Auburn Aviation Association, and he's going to be introducing us to one of their students. Would you call it
Scholarship
one of their
recipients.
scholarship
Yep.
recipients? And we're going to be talking to her about how it was like going through the program. But prior to that, Don's going to explain what the program is.
Thank you. Yeah, Auburn Aviation Association has a scholarship program up at the Auburn Airport. Right now we're in the middle of it. We have our application online and a lot of people applying for it. This year we're giving away about $165,000 in scholarships. There'll be at least 6 full rides for private pilot, instrument, and commercial. So it's turned into
six full right through to commercial.
full ride. Yeah. So quite an active program. We have really good support up there. We have a month meeting on Wednesday night, the first Wednesday of the month, and half of the crowd will be young people. And they network after the meeting. It's really grown into quite a program up there, and the scholarship program that's made that happen.
And just for people who don't know where we are, this is Placerville. Auburn is about 21 miles to the north of us, just east of Sacramento in the Sierra foothills. That's where we're based.
Yeah, and you have 2 young guys that come up there to our meetings from here. They heard about it through our Aviation Career Day, which this year is going to be on October 17th. Mark attended that last year, and we had over 225 people at that.
Yeah.
And this is where we talk about our scholarships and aviation careers. Mark talked about being a salesman, which is really cool.
Which
it's one
I
of
am.
one of the many avenues in aviation.
And what's your major income? How does the money come in to it?
We have an endowment at Auburn Aviation Association, and we can pull about 24 grand a year from that. And then the Getchell Foundation gives us about 135,000 to give away. They have a Sea Fury and a big endowment that they provide us money for, so we distribute from them. Mach 5 Aviation has a scholarship, and the EAA 526 has a scholarship. So Auburn Aviation administers all those for those people. And we have achieved 50 ratings in the last 5 years out of those scholarships, which is incredible. That's both A&P, private, commercial, and instrument. So quite a good success rate. And the success rate is there because we have a mentoring program. Each scholarship recipient gets a mentor. They have to file a report with that mentor every month, and that one-on-one interaction with them helps them get through. And the mentor is generally last year's recipient that got the rating. So they've just gone through it. They know all the shortcuts. They know how to make it work.
And Mia's a mentor.
Mia's a mentor.
Good,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, Mia is also one of our interviewers. So we use scholarship recipients to be on the interview team because it's their peers. And
Exactly.
they know what's going on at the airport, and they know who needs the money and who needs the help, and they're really instrumental in who we pick. So it's a good program.
Yeah.
And the reason we have Mia here today is because we picked her up as a student pilot. She wanted to become a private pilot. She did well in the interview, had a great attitude, and we thought, we're going to take a chance on her and see how she does. And she just thrived in the program. She got her private pilot really quick, moved right on to instrument, commercial, CFI, CFII, multi-engine, and we've gotten her scholarships and grants all the way through just because she does so well and pays it forward to others. She's helped tutor A&Ps to pass their written exams. She's helped the Aero Museum, California Aero Museum, set up their scholarship program. So this is why we are promoting her and helping her so much. We've even gotten her a grant for an ATP.
Excellent.
So when she completes that, she will have gone from private pilot all through the ATP with our scholarships and grants. And it's because of her great attitude and because she pays it forward as much as she takes it. So
Brilliant.
It's really representing what aviation is all about.
Good, perfect. Well, Don, thanks for the introduction.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat with Mia and hear the first-hand story.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Excellent. No, you're an inspiration because we've talked briefly before this about what you've done so far, and I assumed that you might have been older than you are. So just give us a little bit of background about your age and when you started and how that all happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 21 years old right now. I have turned 22 in August, so a little ways to go. I got started flying when I was 17 years old. I had graduated from high school when I was 16, and I planned to go the classic 4-year university route. But due to some financial challenges, I unfortunately wasn't able to do that.
But you weren't an aviation kid.
No, not at all. I grew up very near the Nevada County Airport, which is even more northern of Auburn. But I wouldn't say that planes really inspired me in any way when I was younger. My passion was kind of advocacy, environmental conservation, ecology, forestry, that kind of stuff. And I planned to go on to university to study that. But I had never really thought about airplanes and their contribution to that sort of thing.
So what diverted you suddenly into them?
Honestly, it was chance. I lived in Nevada County at the time, and it was during kind of a more rampant fire season, same season when the Camp Fire happened.
Oh.
Yeah, and, luckily I wasn't affected by that, but there was a, medium-sized wildfire that was sparked about a half a mile from my house, and as I was evacuating with my family, I was able to witness kind of the full air power of CAL FIRE and their associated companies, which I had really never seen or paid much attention to before. I was able to see the small tankers, the spotters, the large tankers. And as I watched them kind of do this coordinated dance over the fire, I was really struck with inspiration of, wow, like, I didn't really consider this to be a career path. I didn't really consider these people for really the heroes that they are. And the more I started looking into that career path, looking into what is CAL FIRE, what does U.S. Forest Service do for fire conservation, even the, Bureau of Indian Management, right? They all do things together to prevent and put out wildfires. And I was like, wow, you know what? I think I want to do this. And so I went and did a discovery flight at Mach 5 Aviation, which is where I teach now.
You're an instructor at Mach 5 at Auburn.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
So I did an intro flight there, and my instructor also had aspirations to go work for CAL FIRE. So we hit it off instantly. And from there, I mean, kind of the rest is history.
So from the beginning, when you first saw that, you thought, I want to actually be a firefighter.
Yes. Like aerial firefighter.
Aerial firefighting.
Pilot,
so
yeah.
you want to fly the trackers or the heavy, some of the, like the 737?
So I actually really want to fly the Super Scooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only like scooper that is really widely spread in the United States. I would love to fly that airplane.
Tell the people who don't know what that is, what it is.
Yeah, so the Super Scooper was one of the first airplanes designed solely for firefighting purposes. A lot of old or history of firefighting, they're all converted from old World War II or Vietnam era aircraft, which worked for a while, but eventually Canada developed it's called the CL-215 and then eventually the 415. That was a scooper. And this difference between a scooper and a tanker is a tanker is loaded like at an airport and drops fire retardant typically, whereas a scooper actually will scoop from a body of water. And the Super Scooper can scoop from a body of water as shallow as 6 feet. And so,
how long though?
Like how long, right? I mean, they could go back, Yeah, but they could scoop from rivers, theoretically. Like the American River, they could scoop from that. And they can carry, I believe it's 1,800 pounds of water, or gallons of water. And so they are just a huge force for initial fire suppression. And they're actually really widespread everywhere else in the world except America. Canada has a huge amount of them. Europe, they're very popular. But in America, they're not as widespread. But I just think that they are incredible, and the company behind them, well, they didn't invent them, but the company that operates them here in America, Bridger Aerospace, they're actually inventing new up-and-coming fire-specific aircraft, which I just think is amazing, and so I'd love to work with them.
And it's a twin-engine turboprop.
Yes, it's a twin-engine turboprop. It's a seaplane, so it's a multi-engine seaplane.
And it's an amphib.
Yes, correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's what you started. You thought, this is what I'm going to do, and you've just been doing it since you were 16, and now you're 21.
Yeah, it was 17 actually.
How many hours do you have at the moment?
I have 1,500 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot.
I know. Well, in the grand scheme of things.
And
you ask Don, it's probably not much to him.
What do your peers think, or your other people your age think of you, how far you've got and how fast you've done it?
Well, I think it's kind of, you'll get it anywhere. There's a little disparity nonetheless. I think a lot of my students. I'm full-time flight instructor, so I try to mentor all of my students because I understand sometimes how daunting it is, the task of going from private to having that 1,500 hours and either moving on to be, a medevac pilot or a regional pilot or a 135 pilot, whatever you want to do, right? Sometimes it can really seem like a daunting path. So I try to be a mentor to them, and I think that they appreciate that. As far as like peers my age, I think there is, sometimes there's like a little bit of competition. Usually it's friendly, I think. But we all try really, especially the recipients, like all the other scholarship recipients, because I'm certainly not the only one. We all try to have a really strong community for all of our mentees. So we will collaborate and talk together and try and figure out, okay, like, are you having a problem with this person? Or I need some advice about this. And so we try to have a really strong community for mentoring the future recipients of the scholarship.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
And you were mechanically inclined too. You've done an A&P course.
Yeah, so I actually apprenticed at Mach 5 as well as an A&P while I was working on my instrument and commercial, because I've always been, interested in the mechanical side of things. A&P is its own feat. You either have to do like that 3 years as an apprentice or 2 years through formal schooling.
And somebody who wants to be, just quickly on that point, somebody who wants to be an A&P but doesn't want to be a pilot, they could still go through the scholarship program.
Yeah, so it's actually not the scholarship program through the Auburn Aviation Association, but it's the grant program through the Ellsworth Hovey Getchell Foundation. And so they won't be like what Dawn was talking about with having these scholarships this year. Those won't be, the A&P won't be advertised with that. You would have to reach out to the Getchell Foundation specifically, but that's kind of what the Getchell Foundation was originally founded around, because Ellsworth, Hovey Getchell, he's a real guy, right? Mm-hmm. He, was formerly a mechanic, right, of A&P, and he worked on his Sea Fury, and he really wanted to further STEM education, mechanical education. So there's definitely resources out there for people that are looking to get their A&P or even their IA. So. And
you've done a lot of different stages. You've done private, multi-commercial instrument. Is that, you don't know each one you're going to do, so you have to get a scholarship for each portion of it on the way up?
Yeah, so I haven't had a scholarship for everything that I've done, but there's typically like a path. You kind of think private, instrument, commercial, CFI, double I, multi-MEI, right? You kind of like know what you're going to do next. But yeah, they're not going to, it's not like a loan, right? If I said, hey, I think it's going to cost me $70,000 to do this, they're not going to give you $70,000 to do it, right? You kind of have to, it's per rating that the request is, and they really want to make sure that you've thought about it, so you need to break down your finances, how much everything's going to cost, what your timeline is, because they're really interested, of course, in your success, but also that what it's going to take to get there.
And what's kept you so motivated? I mean, how would you say to someone else who's thinking of doing it, are you motivated enough?
Yeah, and that's kind of a common thing I think that people struggle with, is like thinking that they're motivated enough, and then not really understanding how much it takes to do this. So my thing is that I would tell people is that you really have to treat this like your whole life. This is not a full-time job. This is not full-time college. This is both and more. You should treat this like, when people say eat, sleep, breathe, right? Aviation, they mean it, because if you're going to be successful in this career, you don't want people to have to hold your hand and tug you all the way through it. Mm-hmm. So I think intrinsic motivation, organization, and also a strong community is extremely important to success. But also just holding yourself accountable. A lot of, I think, people have struggle with that, holding themselves accountable, and being honest with themselves. And I think that's where the mentor portion comes in, is because you have somebody who's your peer level that gets that struggle, that's been through it before, and they can say like, look, I get it. Sometimes it's hard, but here's how I can help you.
Did you have like moments where you were stumbling on your way out, where you were struggling?
Yeah, I think everyone does. Less with like the actual flying part of it, but more with like imposter syndrome, What
does that mean?
Well, imposter syndrome means like, you kind of start to feel like maybe you don't belong, maybe you don't actually know what you're doing, maybe you've kind of like slipped through the cracks this whole time. Definitely during kind of the later part of my instrument, in the beginning of my commercial, I started to feel that way, kind of just starting to have a lot of self-doubt. And I think that was because I was ultimately really anticipating in CFI, which I had a lot of stress around because I wanted to be a good instructor. And so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I don't know enough, or maybe I don't fly this plane enough. Maybe maybe I'm not cut out for this. And it was ultimately Don, who kind of like pulled me out of that, because he said, look, if you don't have a little bit of self-doubt, if you don't have a little bit of imposter syndrome, like, I'd be a little worried, right? But, like, you're maybe a little too confident, right? And so he was like, look, let's go. Let's do some flying together. Let's do some ground together. And, he said, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you that, you're better than you are or anything, because it's about safety. And we flew together, and he is just such an amazing and positive and knowledgeable instructor that it really helped me regain a lot of my confidence. And also, he has so much experience that, especially as a check airman at United, he knows if you don't have what it takes. And so, but I try to take that experience that I had and really try and help other people through it, because it's super common, I think, for people to have imposter syndrome, especially young women, I think, in aviation.
Yeah. And on the way up through, say somebody's, the young person wants to do it and thinks, am I able to do it?
Yeah.
How would you then think, yes, this is right for you? Is that in the interview process? You'd be able to find that out?
So sometimes it's a little bit of a gamble. I think it's similar to, you're at the kind of the peak age where you're figuring out what it is you want to do with your life. And I think, it's similar to going to college, right? You might go to college and pick your major and think, this is really what I want to do. And then it turns out maybe you don't like it, maybe you don't want to be a lawyer, right? And that's okay. I think with aviation that can happen to people sometimes. They start flying and they realize, I'm not sure if this is something I want to do for a career. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. Just being maybe like more of a hobby pilot. So sometimes in the interviews, it's hard to tell, because I think a lot of people have the passion to do it. Everyone likes airplanes objectively, right? Everyone likes flying. But sometimes really being able to see if the intrinsic motivation is there and the longevity is sometimes hard. But we, like, as a scholarship program, even if you have made the decision, like, hey, you know what, I don't want to pursue this as a career, we still encourage you to finish whatever rating that you did, like, as a private pilot. Especially, that's mostly where you find it, right, is people who start the journey and then realize maybe they don't want to do it professionally. It's like, look, we gave you the money for the private, let's get it finished out, because it's still something that you will have for the rest of your life, and such a huge learning moment that you can carry on into a lot of other challenging situations.
And it shows that you're committed to something.
Absolutely.
You can finish it.
Yes. So,
and with me in my career, do you know what ratings I have? Private, single engine, land.
Nothing wrong with that.
That's it. I don't know why I've just never gone any further. But you're going to go up and be and fly heavy bombers.
Well, that's what I'm hoping.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
There was a lady here for the Caldor fire that flew the Black Hawk. She was Australian. Mm-hmm. She was absolutely brilliant. I tried to get her in here to talk about it, and I didn't have time. But no, the problem that just being sort of, older and having flown for years and seeing you age 21, have you had any problems being a girl coming up through the system? I mean, that sounds really sexist, but is there any?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of people don't realize how little females there actually are. I was actually just talking to someone from AOPA the other day, and we were kind of relating over the fact that she'd been flying for many years and flying, commercially for many years, and had just had the experience, shortly, not a short while ago, where she had seen a female captain, right? And she said, wow, in 5 years I've been flying, I've never seen a female captain, right? And I also have had that experience where after like 4 years, it was a shock for me to actually see a woman flying an airline, right? Which it shouldn't be,
no.
But there's only it's gone up actually, but I think it's still below 9% of commercial aviators, and that means it doesn't include private. It's professional level, but only 9% of professional aviators are women, and even less, like 2% of AMPs are women. So it's still a very small percentage, but I think, especially in flight training, I've seen a huge increase. I have a lot of women students. I have a lot of fellow female flight instructors. There's an AMP apprentice in our shop that's a woman, so I think we are trending in the right direction. And honestly, I think I'm fortunate enough to say that aside from like general sexism, which just does exist, you know, I don't think that there's really been too much disparity in aviation. And I think that really speaks to Auburn because,
Right.
you know, I don't know if that's the case everywhere. So.
No, I mean, if there's a husband and a wife coming to buy a plane, I treat them both as the pilot. And invariably, it's the husband. But there was an incident once, not an incident, it was amusing. I walked up to them and I said, "You're a Southwest captain," to the lady, "and you want to learn to fly, that's why you're buying a plane." And she went, "Exactly, how did you know?" And I'd made it up, so I didn't come across as sexist. And she was a Southwest captain, and he was learning to fly.
Wow.
And I made it up. It was a guess.
Wow. Wow. You know, and I mean, I've definitely had situations like that where, you know, I've flown into an airport and on cross country with a student, you know, a male student, and the fuelers are automatically, you know, asking him. But it's like, you know what? I think that those stereotypes exist because there's not a lot of visibility for women as aviators. And I don't even know if it comes from a place of prejudice or just visibility.
What would you say to women, girls that are young, that want to fly but don't think they can? What would you say to them now from your perspective? Just get on with it.
You totally can. And honestly, no offense to the dudes out there, but some of my better students have been women. You know, I think that women are really detail oriented. I think they're very
much more organized.
I multitask better. That's proven. And, you know, it is.
Less ego.
Yeah, well, I generally, yes. And, and, you know, I think that if you want to be a pilot as a woman, I don't think that you should let anything get in your way as far as doubts or anything. You know, think about like 100 years ago, right? Where they didn't even let women get jobs, right? And you're going to let some guy tell you can't be a pilot? No, you know, and there are so many female instructors, female professional pilots and mentors out there, not just at Auburn, but really anywhere. You know, the 99s, Girls Love to Fly, Women in Aviation International. You can make connections so that even if you're at an airport where you're, you know, definitely in the minority, you can still have those women.
I was going to ask you about that because Auburn is exceptional because it's got this scholarship program and it's right here in Northern California and you live locally to it. But what if somebody lived in, you know, in France or in southern Florida or in Czechoslovakia and they said, "I would like to fly"? I mean, what would you say to that? How would you just get out and find out what you can about anything, any programs?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many online resources that I really recommend. That's the first place you start. Look at the EAA. If you're under 18, they offer Young Eagles, so you can get like a discovery flight for free. AOPA has a lot of good resources. The 99s is a super prevalent, you know, all-female pilot organization. Women in Aviation International. There's a lot out there that, you know, you can find resources, and you can also find vetted flight schools, right? If you're worried about maybe having an adverse experience with a certain flight school, number one, interview them, you know, go talk to them, and if the vibe is weird, so don't go, right? But there's honestly typically so many flight schools that you can go and you can kind of take your pick and find an instructor that works for you and find a community that works for you. And sometimes it's a lot more hidden than Auburn, but they're usually there.
And Auburn is exceptional because it's got this program on it. But if I was like a young man looking to learn to fly, what was the first thing you would do if you did live around here and you said, "I would like to go and get the scholarship from Auburn"? What would be the process?
So you would want to go onto the Auburn Aviation Association website, and on there, Dawn has included a lot of like pro tips for interviewing, writing an application, dressing appropriately, and how to conduct yourself well in that professional setting. And the other thing I would recommend is talk to people who have applied for things before. If you have somebody who is in a professional job, whether that's aviation or not, you know, they've had to go through an application process, talk to them. And don't use ChatGPT. Do not ChatGPT your application because we will be able to tell. And the other thing I would recommend is to come to the meetings. Like Dawn mentioned, first Wednesday, there won't be one before the scholarships are selected, but even if you just come and hang out at Auburn and you want to talk to people, there's so many people there to talk to. Go to the flight schools, talk to them. There's so many people that will be willing to help you or even look over your application. But the website itself, if that's like, you know, all you can do, so many resources on there for writing a successful application.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Tell us about the planes, just briefly, the planes that you like, that you fly so far.
Yeah, well, I've flown a lot, so, I mean, probably small compared to how many planes you've flown,
No,
but
I've only flown small too, but I have favorites. What do you like?
Okay, so probably my favorite plane that I've flown, and I'm not saying this for Don Wolf's favor, is the Citabria. I really enjoy flying the Citabria. I think that it's very light, it's very agile. I think it's very versatile. You know, it's aerobatic, but can also do some off-field stuff. And she's just a cute little plane. Like if
And
I
it's
was gonna
tail
own one,
dragger too.
Tail dragger, yeah. Like
So how soon in your flying hours and career and experience did you go tail wheel?
I had about 400 hours when I got my tail wheel.
And how was that transition?
It was pretty easy. I thought, you know, I had a good instructor, Ms. Dawn. You know, he definitely took me through the, you know, the hoops of it, like as far as doing a lot of crosswind practice, doing, you know, wheel landings, 3-pointers, right? Just maneuvering the aircraft, being really coordinated. But I thought, you know, I think if you have good stick and rudder skills starting out, it's probably not going to be that difficult of a transition. But I thought it was a really valuable one, especially actually weirdly enough, going into multi-engine training, that coordination and awareness I thought was actually really helpful for the multi-engine.
Where you actually use the rudder?
Yeah, where you actually use the rudder. Yeah.
Right. And which twins have you flown?
Primarily I've flown the Aztec, the Piper Aztec, but I've flown a little bit in a Piper Chieftain, and then we used to have the Twin Technum at Mach 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The gray one.
The gray one, yes. It's gone now, so.
Okay.
Yeah. But, you know, I have a little time in a Baron, a little time in a 310, DA-42, but those three ones that I mentioned first are the primary.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I always ask people at the end, have you had any experiences, events, things that like an emergency?
Oh yeah, I mean nothing crazy. I think they've all been fine. I've had a few engine failures.
Have you?
Yeah, well, I had an engine failure in a single engine aircraft over Folsom Lake, but I was able to restart the engine. So it was
What plane was that in?
It was a 172. So it had something to do with like the carburetor. It just basically, when the power was pulled to idle, it shut the fuel, like it just cut off the fuel to the carb, and it happened very quickly. So you know, when I tried, like I kind of saw, you know, you can tell when the engine's dying, right? And so I tried to save it, but it was too late, and I almost thought I wasn't going to be able to restart it. I kind of had to do like a little like dive, speed up the prop, turn the starter situation, but it ended up being okay. You know, honestly, my boss was kind of more shaken up than me, and he wasn't even there. But I was kind of like, well, you know.
So the prop was still windmilling, only just.
Only just, yes, yeah. So I mean, the engine fully cut off. Yeah, it was definitely, and I was with a student who also was so like new that he hardly was phased either, even though like
You're calm under pressure.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, and then I've had other kind of odd end things happen. Like I've had some bird strikes. I have had an engine failure in a twin as well, but that's also, it wasn't in a critical phase. It was in route. So they've all been pretty mild, aside from the typical CFI stuff where you get students just,
Where you're having to fix problems they make.
yes, and sometimes you don't know people's reaction when they're stressed out, right? Like if they're in a stress mode, sometimes their reactions aren't always rational or predictable. And that's kind of where that gets like a little funky sometimes, but everything, you know, I've never had an incident, never had an accident. I think it's just about staying sharp, you know, yourself.
Yeah,
So.
and being mechanically minded helps because you understand the systems.
Totally. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know what a carburetor is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not that would have probably helped me too much in that situation, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Mia, it's been very interesting. I mean, it's inspirational. You as a 21-year-old, having done everything you've done so far, I can tell in another 21 years you're going to be an old bomber veteran firefighting lady. So come back and tell us how that goes.
I absolutely will. I'm definitely not going to be a stranger to Northern California because this is my home and this is really where I want to, you know, this is a community I want to serve. So even if my journey takes me elsewhere, I'll come back to the
Come back and
Skywagons
put our
podcast.
fires out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in case Pottsville catches fire again.
Again.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome, Mark. Thank you.
And everybody, thanks for watching. We do podcasts. Mia came in and did this one. If you've got an interesting story, don't hesitate to get in touch. Like and subscribe and comment and ask any questions, and we can have Mia answer them too. And also with the other channel is Skywagon University, which is more about sort of aircraft models, types, years and changes. And then another channel, which is the Adventure Lifestyle channel, is Plane Crazy Life. And all of those, if you can watch those and subscribe and comment to those too. But thanks for watching.